All right, joining me once again is the superintendent of the B-R School District, Derek Swenson. I would say hopefully you had a great summer, Mr. Swenson, but this has maybe been one of the craziest summers for you, I'd imagine.
Yeah, not much of a summer, but a productive one and an important one. So we worked collectively incredibly hard as an administrative team, obviously in preparation for the fall. And with the mindset being first and foremost, we want to put together a plan that was safe for a return for both our students and staff. So that's been our main focus all summer. And right now we're ready to move forward and implement the plan that we submitted last week to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
So let's talk a little bit about that plan, because the districts and the different communities had to submit 3 plans to the state and to DESE as well. So how did we get to this point? We are going with a hybrid model, students getting 2 days of in-classroom learning with some exceptions. But how do we get to this point as a school district right now?
So back on June 25th, the Commissioner of Education, Jeff Riley, sent out the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's initial fall planning. And what they asked all districts to do was to plan for 3 models. One would be a full reentry, meaning everyone returning back to school, a hybrid model, which is the one that we've moved forward with as a district, and one that would be totally remote, similar to what obviously we were in this past spring. What we had to do was basically based upon guidelines set forth by the CDC and the World Health Organization, we needed to make sure that our learning spaces had at a minimum of 3 feet of social distancing spacing. We had to require the wearing of masks, of students K through 12. We also had to make sure that we had sanitation type practices with our cleaning of our buildings, with our custodial staff, also hand sanitizing, materials within the classroom, and hand washing opportunities throughout the day. So with that plan and knowing the space that we have, and one issue that we do have, at least on the Bridgewater side, as you know, is that we're already down a space because of the Mitchell situation with the roof collapse. So we did not have the space that would allow us for a full reentry. With that, we did, explore the hybrid model, and we realized that we were able to move forward with the hybrid model based upon that 3-foot spacing. In fact, we realized that we could do a minimum of 4-foot spacing with each in our classrooms, up to 6 feet in some areas. So that is the plan that we presented to the school committee back on August 5th. It was a very very long meeting, but a very thorough meeting. The school committee asked a number of questions, which they have to, because they had a very important decision, probably the most important decision any school committee in the history of BR has had to make. And after they vetted out all the questions and felt comfortable with what we had presented to them, it was a unanimous vote, 8-0, to move forward with the hybrid model.
And we invite people, if they didn't watch that school committee, watch that, and also watch the forum that was held, I believe, a couple weeks prior. A lot of the questions that we don't get to in this interview, they can definitely get there. And one
Absolutely.
topic that was brought up was the topic of busing. Obviously, a lot of students in the district do take the bus with the social distancing guidelines where they are right now. How is the district going to handle that? And I guess another question is, how does this maybe affect the financial standing as far as transportation goes?
Sure, great question. So one thing we have with a hybrid model is that we have 2 cohorts. We actually have 3 cohorts. We have an A, a B, and a C. The A cohort will be coming in on Mondays and Tuesdays and be remote Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The B cohort would be remote Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and coming in on Thursday, Friday. And our C cohort are our most vulnerable populations, special education students that are in sub-separate programming, our ESL, English language learner students that need more face-to-face instruction, and students that are within foster care or are homeless at this point. We felt as though those populations needed to be in more face-to-face. But with the cohorts being divided, transportation is a concern, but remember, we have half the amount of students that are going to be coming to us on any given day. It's still truly an ice cream headache right now for us to try to figure this piece out. We are working collectively and collaboratively with Lucini bus lines in order to get this problem solved. It is one student per seat, and it's almost on a zigzag pattern or diagonal pattern. We could put 2 to a seat if they are siblings coming from the same household. Working with Ellen George, who is our administrative assistant for transportation, she has worked out a plan with Lucini bus lines, and it looks like we'll be able to compensate all those folks who do qualify for transportation and accommodate them. It may result in having to put an additional bus or 2 on the routes, but we'll have to figure that piece out, as the plan progresses. But right now, I think we are in really a good space when it comes to our busing situation. One thing that we did, require of Lucini bus lines is that between runs, our expectation is that the buses receive some form of sanitation type practices. So we have put together a protocol of what the bus company is expected to do, and each bus driver is expected to do between runs, so that we try to eliminate and minimize the amount of cross-contamination between the tiers. So there's a lot of planning that goes into this, but I think we're in a pretty good space right now. All of our surveys, too, that we've sent out to parents have asked about transportation and if they would need transportation. So we have a good handle on really, truly who would need transportation. And many parents have said that they're going to opt to drop their students off, that they feel it's a safer option. So that's helped us, too, in our bus planning as well.
I believe I heard in one of those prior meetings that both the students, the drivers, and everybody on board the bus will be wearing a mask to help try and create a more safer environment. Getting to the topic of masks right now, there are a lot of new aspects to safety for teachers and students around the BR school district regarding COVID-19. That does include masks. How are teachers going to handle mask situations? Meaning, if a student isn't wearing one, if a student doesn't have one, is there maybe any potential discipline for a student if they raise an issue about not wearing a mask?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, we want to work with families. We don't want it to become a disciplinary situation right from the beginning. We want to be able to work with families. We want them to have an understanding of, the necessity of masks, especially within, confined spaces such as the bus, as you just stated, or even our classrooms, even being 4 to 6 feet apart through social distancing. So really the mindset going in is that we're going to work with these families and try to press upon them, the necessity of the wearing of these masks. I was just on a call with the Law Liberty staff. We have been kind of checking in on their faculty meetings over the course of the last week and going into next week about questions that they may have. And Assistant Superintendent Powers started off the meeting by stating, remember, no one has ever started in a hybrid model in the history of education during a pandemic. So meaning that this is going to be new to everybody. So I think we need to, be patient, realize that, the wearing of masks is obviously not the norm. We are going to have built-in mask breaks throughout the course of the day, especially in the beginning of the year or towards the end of the year, if we're still in, this situation where the weather gets to be a little bit warm and our buildings are a little bit warm. We recognize that. So we're going to have to put in strategies for mask breaks. We're going to have to be able to work with parents and families to impress upon them the need for masks. And really, truly, it's going to be up to our staff to really just, over time, have it become a routine, just like any other routine that we established at the beginning of the school year.
Now, you mentioned conversations that parents can be having with their kids about the masks. What type of role do parents actually play in this school year in keeping the kids safe?
A very important one. First and foremost, they're the first level of defense in the morning, with the expectation being that, parents really, truly monitor their students before going on the school bus, before dropping them off, if they are symptomatic, if they feel they should be taking their temperatures and, before they leave the home. And if they are symptomatic in any way, we are asking them that they please keep the students home on that day. So yes, parents are going to play a vital role in this. And again, be that first level of defense to really truly determine whether or not their child should or should not come to school on that day.
And we talked about the 3 cohorts, but there also is an emergency option, I guess you could say, for parents. And that is they do have the option of pulling their student out of in-person learning and going full remote. So the students do have that opportunity. How does the district approach a situation maybe where a teacher or a staff member maybe chooses to opt out of in-person learning for one reason or another?
Sure. So we do. So again, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education asked us for 3 models. We have 3 plans in place because it's a very fluid situation. In any given time, we could go back from, say, a hybrid, and then if Governor Baker comes out and says because of a health risk throughout the Commonwealth, we have to move to a remote, we'd have a remote plan. And then it could be that the data shows that the curve is flattening again, and we'd have to go from remote back to hybrid. It could be a situation at some point, if a vaccine comes out, that it could be a situation where we go from hybrid right back to a full reentry. So we have to be fluid in what we are doing. So with that being said, we did plan for a remote option for our parents who did not feel comfortable, sending their students back in any form, whether it be a full reentry or the hybrid model that the school committee voted in on August 5th. So we have worked with, for our grades 6 through 12 students, the state provided us with 3 companies and 3 vendors that provide a learning management system platform. And the one that we have moved forward with is a company called Ingenuity, and they will provide the remote learning piece, but it will be facilitated and monitored by a Bridgewater Rainham teacher. But the content, some of the asynchronistic learning instructional strategies and ways of teaching and learning are provided by the vendor. But again, there will be opportunities for the BR teacher to meet collaboratively with that cohort of students that choose remote. But again, a majority of the information is going to be provided, content is going to be provided by the vendor. In our K through 5 model, what we're looking to do is build our own platform through Google Platform for Education. And that is going to be presented, facilitated, and monitored by a Bridgewater Rainham Regional School District teacher. We are either looking at having one of those options by grade level, a kindergarten, a 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, or depending upon the numbers, it may be a teacher who handles the K through 2 students. And then there may be a teacher that does 3 through 5. So it might be someone who's specific to a grade level based upon numbers, but if the numbers are a little bit lower than expected, they might have an individual that goes cross grade level.
I want to talk about testing for a second. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was said that there won't be any testing for COVID at the schools, and there won't be temperature checks as well. What was the thinking of the school committee when this topic came up? Because obviously when you're talking about a regional school district, there's thousands of students to try and account for. So I'd imagine testing is difficult.
Correct. The testing is difficult, and the temperature testing, now this is all, again, we have to remember, we take our guidance from the state, from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And a lot of this did not have much local control. So the testing and the temperature taking, again, that guidance came from the state, and they felt as though we would not have the capacity in order to do the actual testing, nor do we really have the medical staff truly to be doing this type of testing. The temperature taking that they were concerned with was a lot of negative, false negative readings. For instance, a student comes in on the bus wearing a winter hat or cap, or they're running around before they enter the building and their body temp is up. You take a temperature, right then and there, you get a false rating that they have an elevated temp, and we're sending that student home even though they are truly not symptomatic. So they're worried about, that mass of students being sent home for false readings. So that's why they decided not to go with the testing and the temperature taking route at the state level. And again, that's something that we had to adhere to at the local.
I wear shorts in the summer times or in the winter time, so I can definitely understand where warm reading would come from.
Yeah, I run hot too. I get you.
So the fact that the district has had a few months now to work on a hybrid model or an all virtual model compared to back in March, where it seemed like we were kind of learning as we went. Do you feel like the district is a little more prepared now if we do end up going all virtual learning here for the 2020-21 school year?
Yeah, one thing I think, when anything's new, I think you learn the most by the mistakes you make, right? And I think we're not the only district in the Commonwealth that's feeling this way. I think we learned a lot from the process of what we did not know about remote learning. We also learned a great deal through the surveys that we sent out, not only to our parents, but also to our staff in regards to what we needed to do to make this, if we were going to go some element of remote, whether it be remote for a few days within the hybrid model, or if we end up totally remote at some point due to a spike, that we realized that it had to be a much more robust program from a remote standpoint. So with that, being this case, you learn from your past practices and your mistakes. You also learn from information that's provided to you through people who viewed it through a different lens, the parental lens, and through the staffing lens. And what we've actually done is taken that information and that information has helped drive our planning and our decision making. And that has really helped us realize what we need to bring in to the district in our professional development weeks to support our teachers when it comes to our professional development in the areas of remote learning and synchronistic and asynchronistic type instruction moving forward into the hybrid model for the fall.
And we talked about spikes in cases. Now, luckily so far, knock on wood, Bridgewater has been fairly low as far as active COVID cases go. But at what point would the school district transition from a hybrid model to all remote? And also, is all remote learning maybe a way to go here for school snow day closures as we get into the wintertime?
Two great questions. First one, I will say what has helped us out over the course of the last week or two is that Governor Baker came out with a matrix now that allows us to follow trends within our communities and throughout the Commonwealth. And basically, it's kind of a stoplight type measure. You have your green where you're good, you have your yellow where you got to take some caution, and you got to have the red where, at that point you should consider being and going totally remote. And that's all based upon the data that we receive through our local health agents, both in Bridgewater and Rainham. And if you look at the data right now, we're not even in the green, yellow, or red, we're in the white, meaning that we have a very low caseloads of COVID positive community members in both districts. Some communities, I will say Brockton for one, they've had a spike in the last few weeks. And what has happened is they initially stated that they wanted to go hybrid, but based upon this matrix now, they realize they're in the red and they wanted to start remote, and then possibly once that flattens a little bit, safely transition into a hybrid model. So this matrix is really going to help us. So basically what the formula is that if there are 8 new cases per 100,000 people for a 14-day period, at that point, you've been elevated to that red category. And that's when you really should think about transitioning to a fully remote model. At this point, we are not even close to that. We have a very low transmission cases within each district, and we're in that white category. So really, truly, what that matrix is telling us is that we should be entering in a hybrid model. So right now, we're exactly where we should be. There are other communities that have chosen remote, right from the beginning and are in that white category. And now people are saying, questioning, why are you starting remote? The data is not supporting that. So we're really going to rely on that data, with that matrix and working with our local health agents, to determine next moves in terms of going remote, or eventually, if we go fully remote, transitioning back to the hybrid model.
And as far as snow days, is this something that, we could use virtual learning to maybe get rid of snow days? Sorry to say, kids, we could be learning when we have 4 feet of snow falling.
Sure, and this is something that we have asked Commissioner Riley several times on our calls. We have weekly calls with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education with Commissioner Riley, who's been outstanding, by the way, in terms of communication and providing us information, on a weekly basis, because this thing changes so quickly. But we have asked that, and he said he can't commit to that at this point, but it makes the most sense at this stage that if we're going to be have a snow day, why at this stage, if we're set up for remote learning, why couldn't that be now considered a remote learning day, so you don't lose time on learning? And it is a situation where, and I say this all the time, I would much rather have an educational day in a January, February type snow season than at the end of June. I feel like, right, it helps in terms of the momentum, being broken, in terms of what's being taught. And it's just, I feel like this is more educational value during the heart of the school year than, say, at the end of the school year.
Getting away from COVID-19 remote learning for a second, the last interview we had back in May or June, I forget the months at this point, you said that the district was intent on having an in-person graduation after they held a virtual graduation, and we did have an in-person graduation last week from when this is being recorded. What were some of the safety measures taken, and overall, what did you think of how the students handled this situation, going across the stage with social distancing taking place?
Well, I can't say enough about Angela Watson, the building principal, and her administrative team, and all of our custodial staff and maintenance crew who set up our field with all 6 foot distancing between our students, 6 foot spacing in our stands for the parents and family members. The students were outstanding. I have to say, and I say this all the time, this is, the class of 2020 will obviously go down in history for many different reasons, but they are the most resilient kiddos, I've come across in a long while, and they never complained. They just basically wanted to have their day, and I'm so glad that we were able to give that to them, because it was a success. And we get a lot of positive feedback and thanks from the families. And we wanted to make sure that they got their special day that they've earned over the course of the last 13 years in public education.
And I think you even had a student to actually do the worm after getting their diploma, so breaking out the dance moves.
He did. I feel like I had a slip disc just watching. So yeah, he did a great job with the worm.
So finally here, do you have a message for parents and staff as we get ready for a school year that I don't think we could have ever seen coming?
Yeah, I know it's not going to be easy. This whole situation has not been easy from the beginning. I think we all just need to take a collective deep breath. I think we have to realize that patience and flexibility is the key. And there are going to be things that come up that we felt we planned for, but we didn't, because the only time you're really truly going to learn about this plan is when it becomes live. And all I would ask from parents and students and staff members, that we collectively each and every day work together to make this the best year we possibly can for our kiddos, because that's what they require and that's what they deserve. So I think what we need to do is continue to be strong as families and schools and communities at large, and do this, and we will get through it. And I promise you we'll get through it, and we'll get through it together.
Well, thank you for the work that you've done this summer, and also the school committee, as well as everybody kind of tries to collectively get all the kids back in school for the start of school, which is coming up September 16th, I believe, right?
Correct. September 16th will be our first day of school. And the first 10 days will be our professional development for our teachers.
All right, Superintendent Derek Swinson, thanks for taking some time.
Always. Thanks a lot, John. Appreciate it.